Hey, good morning, everybody. We're going to start in about 2 or 3 minutes. Let me go ahead and, as you are settling into your seats, we're glad to welcome you to the Conservation Utilities Conference again this year. I usually don't get this privilege over in this room. I'm Randall Reeder, and I'll be up in room A at 9 o'clock, and then you'll see me, if you're in here, you'll see us on the screen at 9:30 with David Montgomery, our general session speaker. And then you'll get to see David Montgomery again just after lunch right here. How many are here for the first time at Conservation Utilities Conference? First timers. All right, quite a few. We'll probably have more at the 9 o'clock group because they get up later. But anyway, that is the official opening. Well, we're glad to have you here for this, what I would call the spatial Healthy Soils for Healthy Waters session. This is first time here, but it's a continuation of a series. And the last 2 years, it was done in Memphis, Tennessee, and then last February, a year ago, in Denver, Colorado, as part of another meeting. So this year, we've got Healthy Soils for Healthy Waters as part of our Conservation Utilities Conference here both days. So if you look at that program on pages 6 and 7 for today, and then tomorrow it's pages 12 and 13 in your program. And you'll see there's an amazing lineup of speakers and topics. While we're talking about the program, if you haven't looked through it yet, if you go all the way back to the inside back cover, which is page 15, you'll see the layout of the building and how to get over here. Obviously you got over here, so you're in good shape from that standpoint. So if you found your way to the chapel, you can probably find your way to all the other rooms as well. We are glad that we can offer CCA credits and CLM credits to the livestock managers. And this is the clipboard. There'll be 5 of these all together, but they will start at the front row and work their way back. This will be interesting. How many of you are going to sign up for CCA credits? Let me just see your hands. Wow, we are really glad to have such a great turnout of crop consultants. And how about certified livestock managers? All right. Well, we don't really have too many livestock folks come to this. But anyway, this will be passed around by the various moderators. I'm going to be introducing Barry Fisher, but that'll be the last time you'll see me over here for a while, unless I'm taking pictures. Alan Sundermeyer is going to take over as the moderator then. All right, the opening presenter, and he's also going to be the closing speaker tomorrow afternoon. Barry Fisher, and I'd be surprised if most of you don't know who Barry Fisher is already. He's been a conservationist in Indiana almost forever, and part of that time with NRCS, he was just telling me, mentioned last night that he started out just across the Ohio border near Richmond, Indiana. But now, and for the last few years, he's had a position as one of the soil health specialists with NRCS. And he works with Jim Horman. Many of you know Jim Horman. You'll see him here later today too. But Barry's going to begin this program on regenerative agriculture. How many of you are familiar with the term regenerative or regenerating agriculture? It's not just, we may have to change our name. It's not just conservation anymore. We have to regenerate, rebuild our soil. So Barry Fisher is going to lead off the program talking about building a successful conservation system to regenerate our soil. And so let's welcome, if you will, Barry Fisher.
Thanks, Randall. Got to spend a lot of time with Randall last night, and we've been doing this for a long time. Randall and I are, we've been around since soil was actually rock. So we've seen a lot, in our time, and don't laugh too much. Some of you guys were too. So anyway, this is a great honor to be part of this program. We had a great, the previous Healthy Soil, Healthy Waters programs we had were well attended and had some fantastic lineup of speakers. So I'm just kind of the warm-up band, some high school friends and I went to the Styx concert last weekend. Any of you old Styx fans, So I'm the warm-up band, and the rest of the day you're going to get some of the best speakers you could ever compile in a conference. So I need to go quick and get out of their way. But there's a lot of interest in my 36 years with NRCS. I've never seen a subject that comes up where it generates so much interest and it's so relevant to so many of our farmers and our CCAs. I spent last Thursday with 35 CCAs and retail managers for the Land O'Lakes and CFS up in Minnesota. And their producers are coming in and wanting information on how to integrate cover crops, how to integrate and improve and regenerate soil health in some of the best soils on the planet. So while I was up there, I brought some soils that I'll show you here in just a second that are some of those best soils in the planet. And what I want to show is our management choices absolutely affect the function of our soil to a large degree. And if we're going to talk about healthy soils for healthy water, really you have to understand what the functions of the soil are and maybe where they're being limited by some of our management decisions. And if we get those functions regenerated, if we restore some of those functions to what their capabilities are, then of course the ripple effect is production, resilience, and healthier water and improved water. So that's kind of where we're going with this. This entire day is going to be devoted to those, and you're going to see, I'm going to try to lay the groundwork and kind of maybe stir a little interest as to why this is so relevant to so many of our producers and so many of our retailers, and CCAs that are in the room that work with those farmers. But the rest of the day, you're going to have the pieces fall into place from the kind of speakers that we've got that will put together a strategy for you, and you should really be able to find a logical, practical solution on almost any system that we've got in agriculture. So as we talk, I have to forget that this thing's got a delay. There we go. When we talk about soil health, we talk about that this definition that's been kind of joined in by the research community, and we've kind of got buy-in from a lot of conservation organizations and even retail folks have looked at this. Industry has looked at this, and we came up with we got to be clear what we're talking about when we say soil health, because the reality is it's in every magazine, it's in all kinds of places, it's in advertisements. There's a lot of people selling soil health, so you get your bag or jug of soil health and you're good to go, right? The reality is this is an absolute a whole transitional thought process that you have to integrate all of your management towards. And we're talking about the continued capacity of soil health, of soil to function. So we don't mean just soil health is really good in the really good years, but it means it's a resilience, that its continued capacity is what we're really striving for, something that continues to grow and regenerate and gets us through any kind of weather extremes so that we have those functions, those soil functions like infiltration, like water holding capacity, like nutrient cycling. All of these functions, resistance to erosion, filtration of water, there's all of these functions that a soil has the inherent capability of, but in many cases, they've lost some of those functions. So we want it to be a continued capacity of soil to function as a vital, living ecosystem. And that's what changes in our management. If we manage for a living ecosystem, if we'll take care of something that's alive better than we do something that's inanimate and just maybe a pile of rock, okay? If we manage it as a vital, living ecosystem, then we will have an idea how to change the management. We're going to think habitat. We're going to think about, is it getting enough food, resources, air, and water in that system to thrive? And so if we manage it as a living ecosystem, then it will sustain our plants, animals, and us. Okay, so that's an important definition that we all need to know about. Okay? This is going to be brutal.
There you go. I'll do it from here, Barry.
Okay. So, if we're going to manage for that, then we're going to manage according to these 4 principles that we've come up with. And we've talked about at this conference a lot about minimizing disturbance. We talk a lot about no-till. But there's other disturbances too. There's chemical disturbances. There can be biological disturbances. Overgrazing is a biological disturbance. The mere fact that we're going to take this landscape and convert it to 1 or 2 species growing on it is actually a biological disturbance. But tillage is what we think of the most. And we have to minimize that disturbance if we're going to move toward regenerating those functions. And in our corn bean world, many cases, even if we're in a no-till system, we're finding that we don't have enough cover to protect the soil aggregates, to protect the organic matter and the organisms in the soil. So we talk about maximizing. Let's get a little more cover. Let's totally cover that soil surface any chance we get. Corn and soybean world is not a very diverse one. We need to find ways to bring back diversity. The way that we feed that living ecosystem in the soil is from the free sunlight energy, the CO2, and we use plants to formulate the sugars and the proteins, and those plants will in turn release about half of what they produce into the soil as food for the microorganisms. So they're doing that through photosynthesis and living roots. So if we don't have living roots there very often, and it's not a very diverse plant community, we won't be producing very much diverse food sources and resources for the organisms, and we won't do it as long and as often during the year as possible. So these 4 principles need to be in the back of our mind with every management decision, with every pass across the field, every trip, every operation. We need to be thinking, is this going to be in keeping with putting these 4 principles together to regenerate soil health? And sometimes these, those arrows up there point to the fact that these all are in a constant motion and constantly help each other, and they collaborate with each other. So in one given year, if you maybe can't meet one of the principles the way you want, then you plan ahead and you ramp up the other 3 to keep this system regenerating. Okay? So that's...
You working it all?
If it is, I'm not getting it. Okay. So these principles, I divide them into 2 things, and well, the ones on the right do more of the protection. Okay, they protect that habitat, and the ones on the left, and they'll do a good job of maybe reducing the carbon loss, reducing the organic matter loss, reducing erosion, those kind of things. It's a good protection. It will stop the losses that we may be occurring on our fields. However, if we're truly going to regenerate and build, then we've got to feed that diverse habitat. We've got to feed with continuous inputs of carbon and sunlight energy. We've got to feed those organisms if we're going to truly regenerate, and we've got to do it a larger portion of the year. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Alan. And so how are we going to do that is the question. Let's stop right there if we can for just a second. So I mentioned early on that we need to regenerate and restore soil function. And I was recently up in Minnesota on some of these black mollisol soils. You know, we've seen this demonstration, probably a lot of you have, but when we talk to those folks up there, there's kind of a complacency, and we kind of can get that here where, you know, yields just keep going up. What are you talking about, Fisher? We must have good soil health or we wouldn't be getting good yields, right? And the reality is, even on those very, very highly inherently good soils, we've lost a lot of the soil function in those areas. So I collected a couple. I happened to be in an area where I could look at right across the field fence, the property line. There was one management that was pretty continuous tillage. The other one I happened to know from the farmer was long-term, more of a long-term continuous no-till, strip till in the history, but had cover crops for the last 4 or 5 years. So when you look at the function in what's inherently one of the best soils on the planet, then we immediately need to just talk about soil function just a little bit. And these are the exact same soil type, same soil series, but the kind of function that I'm talking about is we have to have a positive relationship between our soil and our water. When soil comes in contact with water, it can't just fall apart and explode down to its mineral portion. It has to be able to take water in. Wherever the raindrop falls, that's where infiltration needs to occur, into the matrix of the soil through water-stable aggregates. Those water-stable aggregates are formed through that living biology that I just talked about. They produce a lot of glues. The roots and the mycorrhizal fungi hyphae and all of the glues from the bacteria and things like that stick these soil particles together in a way that makes them work together with water and not be damaged essentially by water. So those key functions have to be in place. And even on the best soil on the planet, we're going to take a look at. This one over here has been in that continuous no-till and cover crops for quite a while, okay? This one has been under, actually it would be called a conservation tillage system, okay? These soils have inherent organic matter levels plus 3.5 to 4, and if they were in their native state, they'd be 6 or 8, okay? And so these soils are very resilient in and of themselves. But when we manage them differently, same exact soil type, they have a much different relationship with the water. And so as we look at how these soils function, I just put these up here as a backdrop for us to keep in mind. Soils have a very, very important function in their relationship to water. And when they break apart into an elemental portion down to those clay particles get into the water and stay into the water, stay suspended into the water. And I don't know if y'all, I want to make sure, this is kind of a dark room, but when you go to a soil that's one of the best on the planet to start with, you may be a little complacent. You're probably still getting very, very good yields. But you still are not getting the highest potential yield and productivity. You've not got the highest resilience during drought and extreme weather. And you certainly have not got the kind of relationship with our water that we need to have in those soils if we're going to have that kind of production. Even the best soils on the planet need to have those functions in place. Water goes in here. Water's going in, soaking in just fine. It will actually be held better. It will be a higher water holding capacity once that's done. So, just keep this up here to look at as we talk about and think about, is our soil functioning, okay? So, almost every farmer in the room or CCA in the room who has yield monitors knows what I'm getting ready to show you probably. Most see, if you still aren't convinced that this matters, this isn't just some feel-good thing that we call soil health. This actually is real, relevant production, resilience that matters, and we see it every single year if we know where to look. We have this program that we have in Indiana where we have enhanced photography. You can kind of look at that and see the difference in the colors. You see those lighter shade colors, that's a lower healthy crop. The crop health is not as good there. See the dark colors in the lower areas? Getting more water, right? More water, better, darker green is going to equate to what come harvest time? Yield, right? A little yield or a lot of yield? There's a big variation, right? If you see this one anomaly down the left side here, can anybody see that? It's just not going to go, Alan. See that right there? That kind of goes up and down over the ravines, and so it's not a drainage area. What do you think that is right there? Have you seen those on yield maps where an old fence row has come out? Okay. What do we know? See, the reason we know it's an old fence row is there's the old property line. That property line meant that fence row was there probably quite a while. And so if we take that all the way to yield, what's that area going to yield difference? It can be 30, 40, 50 bushel difference. It's not just a little yield difference, it's a big yield difference. What do we know about that fence row? Remember those 4 principles I just talked about? Did that have very much disturbance, that old fence row, for years and years and years? Did it have maximum cover? Was it diverse? Probably had a lot of different plants growing in there. Did it have a continuous living root? So every single year, if we know where to look, we have validation that this is important to yield. This soil health is important to yield. Okay, let's go to this next one. Okay, can anybody see in the lower right-hand corner there? This red dot doesn't work on this either. Upside down boot. Can you see that darker upside down boot? You can see that? Click to the next slide for me, Alan. See the upside down boot? Go back. See it? Big yield difference. You think that old woods, that was probably an old sow lot or something, right? You think they fertilized that pretty heavy? Is that a fertilizer response? Did that area that was in woods and pasture, did that have much disturbance? Did it have continuous cover? Did it maximize cover? Did it have diversity? Did it have a continuous living root? So if you want validation and you know where to look for it, this is a real benefit to restore and regenerate soil health. This is no foo-foo, okay? This is real relevant benefits to our producers. Go to the next one for me, Alan. Next one. There you go. So if we use those 4 principles that you're going to learn how to manage for today, if we use those on a regular basis in everything that we do, we know how to manage for that fence row effect. And when we see fields that's been under that kind of management for several years, we see that when we have a rough year, this farm, both fields were originally under the same ownership 1 generation ago. When the farm got split up, it got under 2 different management scenarios. Okay? 2 different management. One went with more of a soil health management, 4 principles. The other one stayed with more of a conservation tillage and a tillage scenario. When we hit a rough year, we can have some of that fence row benefit across the entire field. And when we start getting 30 and 40 bushel benefits in tough years when prices go up, this is a very, very important economic benefit that we can enjoy. Okay? Next one, Alan. Next one. We may have too many big programs running on the desktop if we've loaded them all on the desktop. All right, so if I was going to talk about a management system in corn bean country, give me some of the practices that I'm going to put in place to achieve those 4 principles. No-till, cover crops, what else? Those are the obvious ones, right? Tile, maybe, if you need it. If you've got a high water table situation and you have nowhere for your water to go. What else? Just nutrient management, same nutrient management that everybody else is going to use? Okay, it's going to be an adapted nutrient management. If you're going to stop tilling the soil, if you're going to add cover crops, and you don't know that you're going to change nutrient cycles, and you don't know that you need to adapt nutrient management, you will miss huge opportunities. That's the train wrecks that people experience a lot of times, is because they don't understand the biological contribution is one of the biggest contributors to what goes in that plant. Over half of the nutrients that wind up in a crop plant will have come from the soil and the biological release, not necessarily what we put on. We still need to be very good about what we put on and how we put it on. But if you don't understand the biological contribution and know how you're going to change it when you switch to a no-till or a cover crop system, you will miss opportunities. So yes, what's another one that may need to change? Leave the residue on the surface. Don't haul it all away, for sure. What else, Dave Brandt? What are you going to add to your planting date? You might have to change your planting date. Are you going to need to add another crop? Having a different rotation would be nice. That may not always happen, but we can actually get a crop rotation effect beginning to with even our cover crops. What else needs to change as far as a named practice, a practice that we talk about a lot? What does weeds and insects fall under? Pest management. So you're going to have to adapt your pest management strategy too. You better be as good as scouting for beneficial organisms as you are scouting for pests. And if you can put all these things together in a complementary system, use the technology that we have today. We have wonderful technology. This is easier than it used to be, folks. You will start improving organic matter. You'll improve the aggregate stability. You'll start having more available water during drought periods. Your nutrient cycling efficiency is going to improve. And when all of those things improve, then the biology will actually start flourishing, and they will go right back to the top and actually improve the things above. They'll start improving organic matter. Now, I've got the word improving organic matter. Are you absolutely going to see your soil test organic matter number go up right off the bat? You may not. Is organic matter just a thing? A thing? It's just a number on your soil test traditionally, right? We're going to learn today. There's going to be a bunch of people, Rafiq they're going to talk here in a minute and talk about there's different pools of organic matter that you better understand and know that they improve function in the field that may not always show up on your traditional soil test, okay? So there's a lot of different pools of organic matter. When we talk about improving organic matter, it's more than just building it, okay? So, all right. So that production resilience, when I talk about improving organic matter, most of you know this. That means we're going to improve the production, the resilience, and reduce costs if we get these things in place. We can store and release crop nutrients, hold water, improve infiltration. All of these benefits, there's reams of data that support why this is important to regenerative agriculture and resilience, okay? So, next one, guys. Aggregate stability. There's a lot, that's a term that I want everybody in here to really become familiar with. This was demonstrating aggregate stability. Aggregate stability has to take place because that's where the biological components of the soil are putting the soil particles together, giving you pore space, allowing infiltration. If that aggregate stability is not in place at the surface, at the very near surface of your soil, then you're not going to get, when the raindrop falls, it doesn't get to go into the matrix of the soil right there. It's going to run across the top. It's going to grab a bunch of soluble nutrients until it finds a hole to get to a tile. That's not infiltration. Infiltration from a soil health standpoint means we've got aggregate stability at the soil surface where a raindrop falls, it goes right in right there because there's pore space. There's a way for it to get in. And when it gets in and comes behind it, air follows it. That keeps organisms flourishing. It keeps the stability going. So infiltration and aggregate stability are very directly tied. But you need to understand the difference between infiltration as a result from aggregate stability and just water going in the soil through preferential flow. There is a difference, and what we're talking about doing is improving aggregate stability and infiltration where the raindrop lands. Okay? So all of these things equate to, next, just go all the way, keep clicking here. Keep clicking, right here. So today, the rest of the day, when you're listening to these presenters, take a look at how they're putting this management system together. Because as we transition, if we decide we want this instead of this, every step along the way won't be absolutely intuitive to all of us. That's why we have to have those pioneers that have been working on this for a long time tell us, how did we integrate no-till with cover crops? How did we use cover crops to enhance our nutrient management? How did we adapt a crop rotation that benefits all of the others? And how did we change how we manage weeds and pests so that it complements the entire system? Okay, that's going to be important when we start fighting some tough weeds, but we still want to grow a cover crop. There's going to be some adaptations to all of these practices so that they complement the entire system. So listen throughout the day as these presenters put together the logical and practical knowledge and understanding and steps that you're going to need to successfully transition, because the pursuit of this improvement, this regeneration, is well worth it. It's worth the journey, and it will be a journey. It won't just happen overnight. You won't be able to order your soil health on Amazon Prime and it arrive at your door the next day. You're going to have to adapt and move and go down this journey and find those people among you that are very, very successful. Listen to them. Use that information to adapt to your own system. Okay? And so, blow all the way to the end, Alan. Okay? So, click one more time. We can enhance every agronomic advantage and technology that we've put together if we optimize our soil health. Those will all be optimized. We'll get to reveal the true benefits of our technology and advancements if we have a highly functioning soil once again. Okay? One more time, Alan. And if we manage for a living ecosystem, if we decide that this is alive and we're going to manage for it, we'll be able to have the kind of dynamic management that achieves high conservation and very resilient farming and very profitable farming. And that's what we're all here to really learn how to do. Find those logical steps to achieve this kind of higher function. Okay? So one more click and I'll get off of here. If you Google NRCS soil health, well, there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of interviews that you get to hear from farmers like we'll have here today, scientists that we've interviewed and had do webinars. And so there's a really host of valuable information at this website if you really want to pursue soil health. So I encourage you to visit that website if you can at all. So thanks for letting me be the warm-up band. And I can't wait to hear what's next. I'm going to go back and get my notepad out and start taking notes. So thanks for letting me be a part of this.